our cast members will be members of the Screen Actors Guild, and we will need to become signatory with SAG in order to hire their members. As a guild, SAG is responsible for ensuring that its members receive fair working conditions, fees, and safety measures. As a production company, it's important for us to comply with these regulations, which will affect our budget. Let's talk numbers. Our male lead is set to receive $750,000, while our female lead will receive $450,000. We'll also need to account for taxes, but instead of paying them directly, they'll receive payment through a corporate entity, which will handle their federal and state taxes. This means we don't need to worry about the top 4 fringe lines. We'll need to mark down 10% for agent fees and SAG pension and health in the amount of 21%. The grand total number represents our current total with the correct cutoff set at $250,000. However, if we accidentally set the cutoff to 0, the grand total will increase by hundreds of thousands of dollars, which will be difficult to account for in our budget. To avoid this, it's important to list all the cutoffs in our fringes setup. Once we've entered our main male and female leads, we'll need to add some supporting cast members. Supporting cast will be on a SAG weekly scale, or possibly more, depending on their level of experience and popularity. We should add the usual fringes to their fee together with 10% agent fee and SAG pension and health rate of 21%. To ensure accuracy, it's best to consult the SAG-AFTRA website and their current rates for supporting cast. It's important to note that these estimates are based on the preliminary schedule we've created. Once the first AD begins working on the film schedule, these numbers may change. It's important to remain flexible and anticipate the possibility of scheduling changes that may impact our budget and production timeline. We will also need additional cast members on a daily or weekly contract. Here we should include all individuals who are scheduled to work for even a day or two. We can list them under all daily players, with a rate of $1,056 per man day, as stated in the SAG rate sheet for the daily performers. This means that we will need to allocate funds for another 100 days of work for SAG cast members at this rate. In addition, we'll need to factor in SAG fringes and a 10% agent fee. When working with the AD department to schedule our cast, it's crucial to consider whether a weekly or daily contract is more beneficial. By holding an actor on a weekly contract, we can save money by avoiding the cost of additional SAG fringes and agent fees that would be incurred with daily contracts. It's important to weigh the benefits and drawbacks of each option, as well as to consider the needs and availability of the cast members involved. Proper planning and communication with the AD department can help us make informed decisions and maximize our budget. Moving on to our cast department, we will need a casting director and an assistant. These positions may be listed as an allowance or as weekly employees, but for our budget, let's list them as weekly crew members. We will need their services for approximately 4 weeks, which will give them enough time to cast all the required parts for our project. The main casting director will be responsible for finding the right actors to fit the roles, and the assistant will support them in this process. We will also need to list the casting expenses that will be required for the casting process, such as video cameras, stationaries, gas, food. Let's allocate $5,000 for this purpose. We will also need a teacher, on the set at all times when our child actor, Dylan, is present. This is required by labor laws that aim to protect the safety and well-being of child performers. Let's include a social worker for 8 days of service on our set and provide the usual fringes for this position. It is not a SAG position, so we don't have to add SAG and agent fee. Let's allocate $2,000 for cast mileage and another $2,000 for wardrobe fitting expenses, as required by SAG when fitting cast members. Looping is the process of re-recording dialogue in a studio after filming has finished, usually to replace dialogue that was unusable due to technical issues or to improve the quality of the sound. This can be a time-consuming and expensive process, so it's important to budget for it accordingly. Let's set aside $10,000 for looping expenses in our budget. Of course, the exact amount will depend on the size of your production and the extent of the looping required, but it's better to overestimate than to be caught off guard. Overtime is a notorious budget killer, and our beloved SAG members can accumulate many overtime hours, very fast. According to SAG and federal laws, they are entitled to overtime pay once they exceed their daily or weekly maximum work hours. We need to make sure we account for this in our budget and schedule, so let's set aside some extra funds for overtime pay. We can also try to minimize the amount of overtime by carefully planning our shoot schedule and avoiding unnecessary delays such as cast members being late to set because they lost their car keys or got stuck in traffic. Let's make sure to include $15,000 in our budget for overtime expenses. Keep in mind that this number may vary depending on the size of your production, but it's important to account for it. Trust me, you'll thank me later. You're welcome. Sometimes you may find it necessary to hire a dialogue and accent coach for your cast. You can include the expense for these services in this section of the budget. Additionally, any other expenses related to the casting department should be listed here. It's important to note that these items should always be accounted for in your budget, regardless of the genre, location, or length of your project. Let's move on to calculating the stunts portion of the budget.